Carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you all. Next item.
Proceeding with item 12, it consists of two pieces of legislation. The first, the resolution authorizing a one-year extension of the professional services agreement between the City of Oakland and Police Performance Solutions. The second, a resolution extending up to 1 year an extension of the professional services agreement between the City of Oakland and Warshaw and Associates. I am showing many speakers on the item.
Thank you. If we can hear from staff in the framing, and then we'll hear from the public speakers. Members, you can go ahead and weigh in for in the queue to speak.
Present, including the one you're approving, would be $5,244,320. And I will amend the resolution and provide it to the city
I just needed the
clerk.
number. Thank you, Madam Attorney. All right, let us hear from the public.
Once your name is called, please approach the podium in any order. Asada, is that Jacqueline Kinnebrew, Marcus Brown, Gabriel Harlan, Al Marshall. And Madam Chair, you have two members of the public who have combined their cards across 5 items, and they've requested the consolidation of their speaking time on these items. It would be John Bay and Salim Bay. Both individuals having 5 cards, it would appear as though they may have 10 minutes each, subject to your authorization.
Let's see if we can do it with 6 minutes each. Let's see if that would be time
Good
sufficient.
evening. My name is Marcus Brown. I'd like to pass my time to Ms. Kinnebrew, if I may, please.
Thank you. Yeah, this one. To the next
Good
speaker.
evening. My name is Jacqueline Kinnebrew, 25-year employee of the City of Oakland. In April, it will be 26 years. And I have something to say on behalf of the employees at the civilian employees at the police department. In August, a group of us met with some city leaders, in addition to the union, with Warshaw and his team. Concerns were expressed about the stop data, documentation, manipulation of crime scene evidence, the ineffective management at the police department, and also the pending expiration of the consent decree of the NSA. I heard a lot of standard, politically correct answers that seemed to lack empathy. I couldn't take it anymore, and I said to him, we stand in front of you with black eyes, knocked out teeth, bruised ribs, we are bloody, and it happened on your watch. Instead of an open, overt crusade on the citizen of Oakland as the rioters, a covert operation on the civilian employees of the police department has occurred. You can't ask the wolf about Little Red Riding Hood. You already know the wolf was a wolf, and that has been determined by the courts. Why are you asking a wolf to give a report about Little Red Riding Hood? You are collecting data. If you want data, I can give you data. I'm a police records specialist. We are failing miserably at the police department under your watch. What will happen when you leave? After that, a meeting with Warshaw and the civilian employees of the police department was supposed to take place. It never did.
Good evening, Al Marshall, Chapter President. The City of Oakland has been paying Mr. Warshaw millions of dollars to uphold the consent decree. Our members, as you just heard, have been retaliated for upholding the court's order while Mr. Winshaw has failed to protect them. We ask that you give this some real serious consideration before you extend this man's contract, because our non-sworn members are being harmed on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Next speaker, please.
I, too, question Warsaw. I met with him last week. I was told that there is no standard or matrix that is being used in their evaluation process that can determine whether the Oakland Police Department is currently or in the past has been involved in racial profiling. None. I was told that the final report will not reflect racial profiling. it would reflect something called disparate treatment. Don't even want to identify with racial profiling. But if you look at what was told to us last year, that we're going to be coming out of this by the end of the year. This gentleman just said we're coming out of it soon. We're not coming out of it soon. If you look at the 19th quarter report, just going to talk about the issue of sustainability. The report reflects that some tasks, the department has been in compliance and gone into partial compliance, in and out, in and out. It also reflects deferred compliance. Deferred compliance because of failure to provide data or partial data or incorrect data. You cannot come to an end after 12 years with inconsistency within the department. And that's what's going on, inconsistency. You just hired last June a doctor from Stanford. My understanding is that she was supposed to look at racial profiling. But a report that she was supposed to give at the Community Policing Advisory Board said she was going to be looking at tensions between the police department and the community. There is an effort to undermine racial profiling. You can't end something if you can't even deal with it. And that's what's going on. After 12 years, the inability to solidly, openly deal with the issue of excessive force and racial profiling, and to come up and talk about we almost there. We are nowhere near it because we won't even talk about it.
Thank you, Asada.
Good evening, Mr. Bay.
Madam Chair, would you like to address the minutes?
So you're entitled to 10 minutes. Do you think you can do it in about 6 between the two of you? That would be about 12 minutes, or do you need 20 minutes?
We need 25 minutes
You're recognized for 10
per
minutes.
person to adequately deal with what we're dealing with, right?
Okay, you're recognized for 10 minutes, sir.
All right. My name is Salim Bey. I'm a longtime Oakland resident for the majority of my life, 20-plus years as a homeowner in Oakland, and somebody who would be considered indigenous to this city as opposed to Warsaw, who is a carpetbagger who came in and takes our tax dollars, where you give $13,000 to a whole project as a city of Oakland, but you're going to get $5 million to 2 people who come in and out of town and write 4 reports a year. That is not good leadership. The compliance director's position was a compromise by the city and the plaintiffs to save a failed OPD incapable of self-regulation and equal protection for the citizens of Oakland, especially as it applies to citizens of color and specifically black citizens of the city of Oakland. Thomas Frazier was the first contracted compliance director. As soon as he started, the very next day, myself and my brother, John Muhammad Bey, went to the compliance director, gave him all of the information that we've been giving you as a city about fair and unequal treatment of us and our people. And you can Google this, okay? Thomas Frazier responded that he was reopening egregious cases of failure to investigate by OPD as it applies to IAD. One of the cases that he reopened was IAD 07-0538. Show of hands, how many people up here have ever heard of 07-0538? At least one. But that calls into question all the other people as, what is your truthfulness? 2 weeks after saying he's going to reopen 07-0538, which was a complaint filed by me in July 13, 2007, about failure to investigate the murder of my brother Wajid, CEO of Yo Black Muslim Bakery, and the attempted murder by 4 gunmen in Montclair at 6:30 in the morning of my brother John Muhammad Bey in front of his house with his infant children and everything like that, shot up with guns that OPD knew were stolen and just watching. It's called gun walking. Google that, Fast and Furious. 2 weeks after announcing he was going to reopen 07-0538, OPD lost 2 chiefs in a row and had 3 chiefs in a 1 week period. Is that a coincidence? OPD IAD opened the new case investigation of 07-0538, which is failure to investigate Wajid Bey and John Bey. They reopened it in 2013, July 2013, as 13-1062, IAD 13-1062, all right, which is an investigation of the cases, the murder of Wajid Bey, the attempted murder of John Bey, and the failure to investigate the IAD complaint of Ali Salim Bey, which is me, to IAD. OPD IAD, headed by Oliver Cunningham, oversaw this investigation, okay? For 7 months, they dragged their feet. To be in compliance with the consent decree and to enforce the consent decree, you're supposed to have this done in 6 months. It took 7 months. After 7 months, Oliver Cunningham met with us and told us OPD has no records whatsoever of Wajid Bey's case or John Bey's case. They came back with a finding, performance of duty. The complaints alleged that there was a systemic failure on the part of Oakland Police Department during the investigation of the murder of Wajid Bey and the attempted murder of John Bey as it relates to the follow-up criminal investigation. The investigation disclosed sufficient evidence to determine that the alleged conduct did occur. This is called the unicorn letter because it's rumored never to exist that OPD or any police department admits that they're wrong, okay? A sustained finding has been determined. This finding is applied to the Oakland Police Department et al., chief all the way down. Why? Because the individual subject officers and their immediate supervisor are no longer employed by OPD. All right, that's factually a lie. No current employees are employed by OPD. Wajid Bey, John Bey, 07-0538. September 1st, 2007. 1.5 months after the failure to look at these cases by IAD, 3.5 years after the failure to investigate the murder of my brother Wajid, 24 months after the failure to investigate my brother's attempted murder, John Muhammad Bey, on September 1st, 30 days after the murder of Chauncey Bailey, who was reporting on and writing a story about OPD's failure to investigate Wajid Bey and John Bey, OPD closed the case. Who closed this case? Paperwork is what we say. Always have a paper trail. Because where you can't find it, OPD, we can. Whose signature is on closure of 07-0538? David Downing, current deputy chief, 4th in command, 3rd or 4th in command. Who was his supervisor at that time? Current chief Went. So here you have the signature of a current employee on a 2000 document closing for failure to investigate Wajid Bey and John Bey. Then in 2014, they say, oh yeah, we admit we never did it. How can there be no current officers involved to be punished, yet the signature of a current chain of command is there? Warshaw's contract states that he was put in that place to be able to provide punishment to chain of command who traditionally is never punished in OPD. They'll throw every officer and civilian person under the bus, but it never gets to the top. So with that, and these are all city documents, this is ABC, very simple and everything like that. This was all given to Warshaw, whose fiduciary responsibility is to punish the people who break the law, racial profiling, by current Deputy Chief David Downing and current Chief Went, okay? What are you gonna do about that, huh? Please don't have a blank look on your face because these are all city documents independently verifiable, okay? With your city letterhead, that means it comes from you. You're responsible for it. What are you gonna do about it? Are you going to give a contract to a person who knows about this and willfully never followed up. Just as we're saying that there's never a follow-up on crimes against black Muslims or black people in Oakland, we're telling you that Warsaw failed to follow up on this. So before you give him a contract, ask him, why hasn't current chain of command been disciplined? Why hasn't there been an investigation? Why hasn't Chauncey Bailey's murder been reinvestigated, since now it turns out that the people he was writing about were systemically violated of their civil rights by Oakland Police Department, right? So what good is it to have Warsaw as an overseer of OPD if he picks and chooses on your behalf who to follow up on? Okay, so as fiduciarily responsible for ratifying the contract of Warsaw tonight, I hold you directly responsible. That if you ratify that contract, it's flying in the face of hard evidence that was publicly given to you, because all of you have all these documents, not just tonight. We've met with multiple people and explained them in detail, and yet you still licking the police's butt. All right? So let's get to the point. Let's get down to it. Why does Warsaw deserve $5 million of Oakland's money when you're giving $13,000 to a whole project that helps people who are trying not to be reincarcerated by OPD? It's upside down. Don't you see why people are in the street right now? Because there's a disconnect between you, and missing you with the people in the street. We're frustrated. This ain't justice. This is 19X Alabama, where you have evidence saying a white police officer committed a crime against black people. And in 2015, on the West Coast, progressive Oakland, California, right? You have no idea what you're going to do.
Thank you, Mr. Bay. Mr. John.
Good evening. John Muhammad Bay. This is in addition to fact-based, logical, chronological, linear set of circumstances that we continuously present to you. Is very emotional. But we've been fighting this fight for 10 years, so we've got it somewhat in perspective as far as the emotion. We can do that elsewhere, but we want to make sure you understand the words that are coming out of our mouths. And what he said, if tonight was the first time you heard it, I think there should be a call for action. Somebody should ask the question, is he lying or what? At the very least, I wouldn't believe him if I was you. And for some reason, he gave me 2 pieces of paper, and one of them is a heavily redacted FBI document from 2003 from Your Black Muslim Bakery. It was a meeting by the San Francisco FBI, JTTF, Oakland Police Department, and the ATF. And I think this is only one page of it, but there are all redacted. Officer 1, 2, 3, 4 OPD, 1 ATF, Officer 1, 2, 3, 4 FBI, JTTF. The subject, again, like I said, at that time, December of 2003, Your Black Muslim Bakery, at that time was under the leadership of Wajid Bey. And anyone who be honest will say I was close to Wajid as his jugular vein. So if they're talking about the bakery, they got to be talking about me, Wajid, Salim, and a few others. That was December of 2003. And then I guess, so they did whatever they do, which is suck up funds based on some fear tactics that they were allowed to have these agents in and the funds to pay for them, and probably a kick for the police department. But the other one that is interesting is that again, FBI, semi-heavily redacted, it was for them to close the above captioned case and all subfiles. And I guess, like I say, since the brother gave it to me, I guess I must be a reason for me to read it. But the details, it says, writer has reviewed the above captioned case, which is that same one, and all subfiles. The above captioned case with the ATF special agent and Oakland Police Department officer. And it says, it is our conclusion, and I'm assuming since it's FBI document, our is FBI, it is our conclusion that the case of Your Black Muslim Bakery has no nexus to domestic terrorism. So aside from the fact that they were trying to hang that on us from this post 9/11 stuff, see, if you could say we have some Muslims who are crazy in our city, we need some funds, you were subject to get them more easier than not at that time, that climate, when they, the top 5 of who did 9/11, the Nation of Islam was on that list. So again, they had a crazy bunch in Oakland that they needed funds, and at least 9 officers at this one, but then it goes all the way up to the U.S. attorney. And we don't know that because we're extremely intelligent. We only know that because we ask. And then when people don't answer us, we ask again. And then when they start stuttering, then we know, okay, now we need to start pressing. So then we go and we ask for documents. Can you print that out? And that's how this whole thing started. I went to request a copy, a routine request from the police department records of my shooting from 2005 because I want to see the pictures, because there's a bullet hole in the headrest, is what Sergeant Brock told me at the time. So to me, that means a lot since I'm still here. But they said they couldn't find it. And that didn't work too well for me. That didn't make sense to me to tell for the police department to tell me as a citizen that they couldn't find the records. Knowing that, Oakland averaged over 100 murders for that decade, but nevertheless, an attempted murder of that sort with multiple gunmen and witnesses, it's kind of strange that that's lost, coupled with the fact that it's connected directly to Wajid Bey and the murder and subsequent burial of him in Oakland. There are not many murders like that in Oakland. We average 100, but not many people were buried, wrapped in plastic. So for those two to be connected, and part of this and all this FBI, JTTF, all kind of attention, again, the U.S. Attorney and the IRS, CID, everybody was heavily involved. And when we went from the IAD sergeant who investigated our case, Captain Cunningham, the lieutenant in between, when we came to them after Frazier's office opened it, they said, everybody's watching this one.
Mr. Bay?
Yes.
JTTF?
Joint Terrorism Task Force.
Thank you.
It was an outgrowth of one of the FBI programs as a way to shift what they did is by dealing with what they call subversive groups. And it was a way they had what they called fusion centers where, again, in the post 9/11, to deal with domestic terrorism, locally you need the local police on the ground, but you need the resources of the FBI. So how do they all communicate and cross paths in a fusion center? And that's where, so those are FBI assigned to be on the local case. So in any event, once our case was open, and again, all these people said that everyone is looking at this case. So aside from the fact that they delayed it, but for them to come back with a sustained finding, and we know that the young sergeant didn't even investigate everyone. And just again, as another example, one of the other things I've been saying from the very beginning was that my police report again was lost, and the lady that I spoke to a couple times, she just then determined misfiled. So you know how when you take a file out, when you put it back, it may not go back in the same place. So it could be there. and it may be found if someone is looking for something else and happened to pass it. So other than that, I was SOL. We all got that one, I'm sure. So, but what I knew was I had a partial copy of that police report myself. I had it. So I felt that the police or the city or someone should be able to find it because I can prove it exists because I have it, and it has OPD's fax number of where someone within the department, the sergeant who was working on it at the time, faxed it to me. Almost 10 years ago, he faxed it to me, and I've had it and I've kept it. And the young sergeant on IAD could not necessarily question this individual because he's retired OPD, and he now is a district attorney investigator, as is one of the other high-ranking officials on this page, is now an investigator for the DA. But in any event, after meeting with everyone in IAD, meeting with Chief Figueroa, no, it was just before Chief Figueroa, one of the other chiefs we met with, and we asked about my records. And I said, why don't you check with Sergeant Brock? So they did, and he had it, as he had it for 10 years, retired police, now a DA investigator, walked with that file. Still has, unless they maybe gave it back. So if he gave it back, they still haven't investigated. We're still waiting. I got a bullet list for Chief Figueroa, and he might get to the parking ticket issue. Okay, how about the murders? So we're not out of pocket. We're not spinning a story. Check us out. Prove us a lie, and if not, then act on what you know. If the police are wrong, then they're wrong. Hold them accountable. If they right, then they right. At some point, and I say this to Chief Figueroa every time I talk to him, at some point, we're gonna have to work together. It's still our community. We have a responsibility in the community. We just need to stop that crap. So Warshaw knows all this, and I'll take no more than 10 more seconds. He knows all this. If you have an opportunity to get paid to look busy, will you ever get up off of that? Hell no. Thank you.
All names were called, Madam Chair and members.
Thank you.
But we're hearing about complaints that went to IA about real things that were not investigated. Meanwhile, we're wasting our staff investigating nonsense against civilians. And these two issues that these two groups of people are raising are really intertwined, because the fact that we're wasting our investigators on this nonsense is part of why they haven't had the time to get to this very serious problem with regard to the issues that the Bay family's been struggling with for over a decade. So if we want to actually get a report back on what's up with that, and if for this money that we're paying this person, have some response back to us on these issues, how do we go about doing that?
In looking at the reason for the negotiated settlement agreement, it was not the non-sworn staff who were responsible for us being under the purview of the negotiated settlement agreement. And so I would hope that we would, I would agree with Ms. Kaplan that we should address this issue once and for all and not let it hang out there and drag on. With respect to the issues that Mr. Bays have raised, I think that we don't have to wait for a federal monitor in order for us to determine what happened in this case. And I think that it is shameful that people have to come for years in and years out to get public disclosure with respect to what happened in cases. I've listened to the Bays talk about documents being lost, about things not being investigated, And at some point, we should want to put these things to bed. So the same with respect to the issues that Mr. Hazard raises. We put people off as if they're gadflies or that they come and they're crazy and they keep raising these issues and we poo-poo them. But at some point, we should want to make sure that our systems have integrity and that they are a place that people can find the relief they seek when they feel they are wrong. And if something's wrong with our processes, then we should seek to address that, not simply have people come up year in and year out with the same complaint, and we just let them come, and then we let them go. So I would hope, and I know through the chair to the city administrator that you're leaving, but I would hope that we don't just say that somebody get with the bays, because we say that every time they come, because it's uncomfortable to hear what they're saying if what they're saying is true. And so then it does make us look suspect if we just sit up here and listen to this and we do nothing. And so I would hope that we would find a place to publicly address these issues where people come to us time and time again with the same complaint. And so, Mr. City Administrator, on your way out, I hope that we will get the documents from the bays and that we will publicly address if there were mistakes, then let's correct them. I don't know that anybody did anything intentional, and that's not what I'm trying to imply. But we don't get to be a better city if we turn a blind eye to the complaints of our residents and we don't address some of these things. So I would hope that tonight, if you've brought some documents, I know you have other documents, that we would get them, and that as this council, we would commit to getting some answers for this, because it shouldn't take an extension of a federal monitor's contract to address this. This is our department.
Thank you, Councilmember Brooks.
For that task 34, which is probably the most dynamic task and sensitive issue of all of the tasks, quite frankly.
And then with respect to the concerns raised by the Bays tonight, without really speaking directly to their case, I'm curious about the process when we find evidence of missing files, when an investigation has been closed but has not been investigated. What is the internal process for quality control around that? How do we reopen cases? And what is the chain of accountability? And when does it land in the administrator's office or our OIG division for compliance or reprimand where people have clearly failed? I mean, we talk about records leaving. Like, what is the protocol around that? What is the remedy for that? What is the punishment?
Generally speaking, without getting into the details of their actual case, the systemic failure that was mentioned by one of the Bay brothers was there was no process in place, no tracking system in place to ensure that when a particular investigator who was assigned a case at the time, when they're done with that case, it goes on file into our storage facility. And in this particular case, what we found in more than one instance, I would not say numerous, but more than one instance, where we had retired investigators, very good investigators, that were passionate about their particular case, and when they went to the district attorney's office to become inspectors, in which investigators and district attorney inspectors work hand in hand on our cases, he carried the case with him over the district attorney's office to continue working on it. That's what happened in that particular instance. That no longer is an issue because that process has been fixed, in the sense that that is not allowed and there's a strict tracking mechanism.
Okay, thank you. And to Councilmember Brooks's point, we would like to see a resolution of the Bay complaint, and that you know, the issue is if they're wrong, but there should be closure brought to this family. They've suffered a great deal. The loss of their family members, the loss of their businesses. Their lives have been upended and interrupted, and we should know the truth about that. Thank you, officer. Councilmember Brooks, are you back in the queue?
I am.
All right, you are the next speaker.
I would like, Deputy Chief, for you to come back up.
Yes.